Oregon State needs a new head football coach. They got to do something else first. I am reminded of Step Brothers all of a sudden.
You are Locked On Pac-12, your daily podcast on the Pac-12 Conference. It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On Pac-12. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your number one source to stay up to date with our media rights and soon to be mostly team-free. But until then, beloved and still loaded Conference of Champions. Like, comment, subscribe, rate, review, please, and thank you wherever you listen to or watch this show, which today is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. There's so much to get to on today's show. I was reminded of that line from Step Brothers where John C. Reilly and Will Ferrell are asking their parents, can we turn our bunk beds or our beds into bunk beds? It would give us so much more space to do activities. That's the sort of energy I've got right now with everything that we need to talk about on today's show. Absolutely jam-packed. Let's get into it. So, Jonathan Smith is going to Michigan State. I tell you, it is certainly revisionist history. But if you told me before the game that Jonathan Smith rumors to Michigan State were going to come out right before kickoff, I would not have had the Beavers plus 13.5 in the Pac-12 prime picks. That is not a good place to be as a program. Speaking of which, Oregon State's in a darn near impossible spot, because they don't have a head football coach. A lot of the staff, though not all of the staff, just remember that in a moment, are going with Jonathan Smith to Oregon State to take over the program there in East Lansing, with the void left by Mel Tucker and that whole situation. And so Oregon State is looking for a football coach. Here's the problem. Oregon State does not presently know, or at least I should say they have not presently confirmed publicly what they're going to be doing on the football field in 2024. It's kind of hard for someone to take a head coaching position at a place where he doesn't know what the schedule is going to be, what the caliber of football is going to be, what the money is going to look like, and all of those other details that are going to be filled in there, and what the conference plan will be for the future. Because if Oregon State and Washington State do what it appears most likely at this point in time, and they go the independent route, basically, as members of the Pac-2, that's a lot different than joining or having a direct scheduling alliance with the Mountain West. Would they rebuild the conference one day? We don't know. So that's all up in the air, and Oregon State now has to figure this out quickly. If you're going to hire a football coach, you have got to – this is not a chicken or the egg problem. You know which problem comes first. You have to figure out what's going to happen with the legal situation, what's going to happen with the money, what's going to happen with your schedule and your conference affiliation and everything like that. It's all got to be done before anyone is going to take that job. So that's the conundrum that Oregon State is in. They're having to figure out both of those two things on the heels of a letdown 8-4 season, which, as I've said many times before on the show, is a great place for Oregon State to be. Jonathan Smith left this program better than he found it, but it's still a situation in which you've got avoided the head coaching position. You don't know what caliber of coach you can actually attract until you figure out your conference situation. And even then, it might not be the most attractive job to the top candidates out there, who I'll start getting to in just a moment here. And there's just complete and utter uncertainty. You just got blown out by your rival. You're not going to the Pac-12 championship game. Never made it there. Everything feels bad in Corvallis right now for Beaver fans, and that sucks. Don't worry. Winners and losers, as always on a Monday, is coming later in the show, but this takes priority. Speaking of which, I didn't want to go too far into the show without mentioning the absolute gutsiness of Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb to call a fake dive end around on 4th and 1 at your own. That was a play call and a half. I was glued to my television watching that play unfold. Anyway, so back to Oregon State here. They have to figure all of that stuff out first, and then they're going to be going through a list of candidates. Now, Jonathan Smith, as recently as I think it was last week on John Canzano's radio show, spoke pretty openly about the fact that his agent was taking calls elsewhere and he's looking to go elsewhere. And so as a result, that has materialized in an offer he's accepted to be Michigan State's head coach. But what that tells me, his willingness to have been open about that, is though he spoke often about the conversations he was having with Oregon State Athletic Director Scott Barnes and what their plan's going to be, and Barnes was keeping him up to date and everything like that, there had to have been a conversation or two to indicate to Barnes, whether directly or indirectly, that he was going to need a new head coach one way or the other here. Because the best situation for Oregon State competitively still is not playing Power 4 football. It's not at the same level. It can still be at a solid level. Heck, you can make the case they can cobble together a good enough schedule in 2024, especially if they're able to get Oregon on that schedule that could get them in the range of the college football playoff for an at-large if they were to have a really, really good season. But is it Power 4 football? No, still not, even that. So who are the candidates? What are they going to do now? Well, I'm going to give my list here. This is just my looking at other lists and understanding the landscape of college football as best I can. And I'll give you the top candidates that I've got in no particular order, the candidates that I'm out on, whose names I have seen floating around, and candidates where I go, I don't know, maybe. So let's start with the top candidates here. Trent Bray is a name you're going to hear quite a bit. That's the Oregon State defensive coordinator. He is not one of the staff members. Remember what I told you earlier in the show? We're coming back to that right now. He is not one of the staff members that went with Jonathan Smith at this time to Michigan State. Brian Lindgren, the offensive coordinator, did. The offensive line coach did. A couple of other assistants did. Trent Bray did not. That has to be because he knows he is a candidate for this job. Some people would argue he's the top candidate for the Oregon State job. The reason for that is rooted in continuity. This is a good Oregon State team. There's a good core here, by the way, in Corvallis. If you're able to somehow retain Aiden Childs, DJ Uiagalelei could be back next year. You got Damian Martinez. Like, there are good players on this roster. And if you are going to be as competitive as you can next year and you want as much continuity as you can on the roster that's been built over the last several seasons, Trent Bray is the option. That is the guy who gives you the best chance of keeping guys from putting their names in the transfer portal, though certainly there's still going to be some who will. Ryan Grubb is another name that I'm pretty high on, the Washington offensive coordinator. The offensive numbers speak for themselves. Michael Penix has had a rejuvenation in his career once he got with Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb. And Grubb has been open about the fact that he wants to be a head coach. He'll be a target. By the way, Oregon State, there's a little bit of history here. The last Washington Huskies offensive coordinator they hired to be their head coach was Jonathan Smith. It worked out pretty well. Another name I've seen out there that I think is intriguing, Brent Brennan, head coach at San Jose State. That is not historically a fantastic program, but he's done a nice job. And one of the core tenets of being a successful coach at Oregon State is knowing how to do more with less. San Jose State is not a premier brand football-wise in the Mountain West Conference. Nor is Oregon State in the former Pac. It's always been a program that succeeds when you can do more with less. Mike Riley did that. I think Riley, had some more talented rosters than Jonathan Smith had, though he's assembled a good roster, of course, in the last couple of years. But I think that sort of program pedigree and understanding that level of assignment, I think that is interesting to say the least. They're not in the Mountain West Championship game, by the way, because of a BCS computers level calculation, which is a whole other conversation. But Brent Brennan will be there. And then here's a name that I just want on your radars because I think he's done a fantastic job, and that's Jason Eck. He is the head coach at Idaho, which is an FCS program, and again, has had its moments since going back down to the FCS level, but they fell upon tough times, and he has built them into a top 10, 15 program nationally at the FCS level. He came over, I believe, from South Dakota State, and they've become a national championship level program down playing FCS football, and they've got some really good football teams and some great players and cultures down there. I think that is a name to watch. That is an interesting name to watch because, again, he went into a place that does not have a ton of money, that is geographically kind of isolated, so it's not a recruiting hotbed, it's not a recruiting power, and he's just won a lot of football games. So those would be the top targets, though not the only targets for Jonathan Smith, or to replace Jonathan Smith, rather, at Oregon State. There are others who I'm not quite as high on. I am very high on Game Time, though, because you shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event, no matter what it is. Maybe it's the Pac-12 championship game on Friday, where I will be, by the way. Would love to see you there. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Game Time is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase, and they're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets with deals right up to the start of the event, even an hour after it starts. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's Locked On College for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right. So other names that are out there before we get to winners and losers, and then I get to be just a little bit arrogant here on the show. I've earned it. I have earned it. That'll come later. These are names I've heard get tossed around. I don't know how serious they are. I don't have any inside information as to who the top targets are, aside from Trent Bray, which is obvious. And again, I don't have anything inside there. That's just, readily available information to everybody, given that he has not gone to Michigan State. He's going to be one of the targets. Here are a few names that I've heard get tossed around, even just casually, that I'm just out on. Paul Chryst was the head coach at Wisconsin, did a nice job for a while. Bronco Mendenhall was the head coach at Virginia. He resigned. He's been out of coaching for a couple of years. And Mike Riley, I mean, if you want to bring Mike Riley on as a consultant, that's fine. Here's why I'm out on all three of those guys. If you're Oregon State, I don't want to go after somebody that hasn't coached in a couple of years. I think there's some inherent risk with that, especially because all of those guys had success at their programs that were not, tier one programs in their respective conferences. None of those guys dealt with NIL in the portal. And I just would not go with someone who feels like they're from a previous generation, from a past era, a different time. I would not go in that direction. So I'm completely out on those three candidates. Maybe could see it. Brian Harsin, he didn't coach this past year because he got fired at Auburn, but I think he understands the NIL and portal world better than the other guys. But I'm not super high on that one. He had a lot of success at Boise State. He did not have as much success at Auburn. I don't think that means he couldn't succeed. Again, I'm just, I don't know. And the other name is Brennan Marion, who is seen as a rising star. He's down at UNLV as the offensive coordinator. He's the author of the Go-Go offense, where basically you put a bunch of guys in the backfield and run a bunch of different fun concepts. It's interesting. It's basically just, his own take on the spread. But I don't know if I'd go in that direction just because he's such a young guy, such a young name. I don't know if the experience is quite there yet. I think you top targets here if you're Oregon State. Jason Eck at Idaho, Brent Brennan, San Jose State, Ryan Grubb at Washington, the OC, and Trent Bray, the in-house hire. I think those are the places where I would focus my coaching search if I were Oregon State, but we'll see how it unfolds. This will continue to be a big story here because you've got the December 4th transfer portal window looming. You've got National Signing Day at the end of December. This stuff is going to happen pretty quickly. I mean, Michigan State wanted to get Jonathan Smith over quickly for a reason. So, all right. Let me know your thoughts. YouTube comments, Twitter at Smalls_55 or at LO_Pac-12. DMs and mentions always wide open for the mailbag. Curious who you think would be a good hire and what you Beav fans out there, or anybody, frankly, what you're thinking about right now. Let's do winners and losers. For the last time, a full slate. This is the last Pac-12 regular season. I don't know when we'll see this segment again on this show. Let that sink in. Shout out to Ted Robinson and Yogi Roth, by the way, who gave a very heartfelt sign-off on the last Pac-12 regular season broadcast on the Stanford and Cal game, or on the Stanford Notre Dame game. I thought that was really nice, and it all came to an end. It all came to an end, and the only outright winner this week are my beloved California Golden Bears. I'm going to talk more about them later. The reason they're the only outright winner, by the way, if you're new here, after you play your football team, I assess what I think the mood base of the mood of your fan base should be after that performance, given a variety of factors. You can be a winner, a lean win, no vibe, lean lose, or an outright loser. There's one outright winner and one outright loser this week, and Cal is the outright winner because the Golden Bears are going bowling. I'm going to save my thoughts for that a little bit later. Lean win this week, Oregon and Washington. They've got the showdown they're looking for. It wasn't always pretty for Washington especially, but they got the win. Shout out the Huskies, by the way. No one had ever gone 12-0 or 9-0 rather in Pac-12 play. They do it in the last year of the conference's existence. Really hard thing to do, and they are a battle-tested team in one-possession games. I mean, they have done nothing but play close games over the last couple months for the most part, and they just keep winning. They just keep winning. They're a big underdog against Oregon. That's a lot of points. It's about 9.5 right now on FanDuel. That's a lot of points. But Washington's 12-0. Oregon is 11-1. The winner will be in the college football playoff in all likelihood. There is a scenario where a team gets left out. I don't think it's likely. Alabama, if they lose to Georgia, gosh, Auburn, could you not have done the West Coast a solid here? Goodness gracious, Auburn. But Washington and Oregon have got their showdown. They've got the rematch. Winner into the playoff. I think that much is pretty clear. Arizona, a lean win. I wanted to go outright winner for a moment, but then I went, Arizona State's pretty down. Arizona State's pretty bad, but Arizona gets a little bit of revenge for the 70-7 beatdown from a couple of years ago. So Arizona ends the year 9-3. They've won their last 6 games. I can't wait to watch them in a bowl game against somebody else. Can't believe they lost to Mississippi State. That's weird, but Jaden Delora threw 4 interceptions, so that happens. And how about this in the lean win department? The old Pac-12 prime picks. Despite the tough break, shall we say, with the Oregon State pick, 3-2 in the last week. It's nice to go out on a high note in the regular season here. I'll do the bowl games as well to see where I can get my percentage. But my goal this year was get over 50% after being under 50% last year. 33-31, 52%. Can I do better? Yes. Will I do better? Absolutely. But 52%. Take that. Take that, because that was the goal for the year. So, no vibe after rivalry week. Colorado, Utah, Arizona State, Stanford, USC. USC didn't play. Utah and Colorado played a game that nobody watched and was actually kind of close because I guess Bryson Barnes didn't play and Nate Johnson's leaving Utah. I don't know. That was a game that just was played for pride. Utah won. They didn't cover. That's not doing a whole lot for you. Shedeur Sanders didn't play. Yeah, rough end of the year for Colorado. They go 1-7 after a 3-0 start. Utah ends the year 8-4 and just asking themselves what could have been had Cam Rising been healthy, but luckily he'll be back next year. Arizona State, didn't expect you to compete against Arizona. No vibe there. Stanford, didn't think they'd really compete against Notre Dame. They did for a little while, and then the Irish poured it on. That's why I kept it out of the Pac-12 prime picks. I didn't have a great feel for that and Stanford's motivation level, and I would have been on the wrong side. So, lean lose here. UCLA ends the year with the exact record that I predicted for them before the season. One of 3 perfect record predictions by me before the regular season. Got to say, that's not bad. I'll do a full recap of that at some point on the show. But UCLA puts up 7 points against Cal. They get housed to end the regular season. After they had all that momentum against USC, they come back home. And they just can't get it going. Dante Moore is going to be good, I think. He's not ready right now. I don't know what you do with Chip Kelly after that performance, but I think the USC win probably gets him another year. I think it probably should, given that Dante Moore is a young quarterback and Chip Kelly's developed one of those once when he looked like a turnover machine as a freshman. I think you give him another year, and if there's significant growth, if you finish with at least 8 or 9 wins over in the Big Ten, I think you can stick with them. But I think that does need to be the threshold. That's an off-season topic, though. So Washington State is a lean lose here. They put up a great performance, but they won't be making a bowl game this year, which stinks. I did not see that coming after a 4-0 start for the Cougs. Colorado and Washington State started the year 8-1. After that, they won a combined combined. One game. Not great. Not great. Oh, by the way, Washington State's win was against Colorado. Yeah. Tough end of the year for the Cougs, but they put up a heck of a fight. But they were right there, could have won the game, had their chances. They just couldn't run the football. And they couldn't make by the way, a Coug asked me to address something which does need to be addressed here on the show. And then I get to gloat, which I'm kind of excited about. I'll gloat about FanDuel all day long because that is America's #1 sports book. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. It's that easy. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is super easy to use. They got a great interface and a bunch of different options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. College football is not over yet. Bowl season's around the corner. You want to spice it up? FanDuel, a great way to do that. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season and get your college football gambling fix as well. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Okay, so a Washington State fan asked me to talk about this because it happened in the Apple Cup. Washington's driving down the field for what ultimately was the game-winning field goal. And on that drive, they converted a 4th and 1 in which they called a reverse to Roma Dunze for like 30 yards. I mean, one of the gutsiest play calls in a big spot I have ever seen. I mean, that was not just to go for it, but to dial up that play. You got to have some intestinal fortitude there. DeBoer and Grubb put that on display. Later in the drive, I think it was Brennan Jackson for Washington State, was flagged for roughing the passer. And I'm going to say this next statement as someone who, as an Oregon fan, wanted Washington to win the game. 100%. Washington State, I love you. I did not want you to win that football game. That was a horrific call. I mean, that was, you talk about the Pac-12 going out as only the Pac-12 can. Wouldn't have been the Pac-12 without a god-awful call that influenced the game. Maybe Washington gets down into field goal range anyway. But they didn't have to work quite as hard for it after the reverse because they got 15 free yards and ended up kicking what was, I think, a 42-yard field goal. I mean, just horrendous stuff from the officials there. That was really bad. I do not expect Washington State fans to say, well, we should have done this or that. No. That's a horrible call. That was a bad call. There's no other way to see it. You cannot call that in that spot. You can't call that ever, but especially not in that spot. There was nothing about it that was roughing the passer. Even Brock Heward, who is a Washington grad, was talking about how much he hated the call. And I don't think he was doing it to avoid the perception of bias. I think he actually didn't like the call. He has been consistent in that analyst spot, and I think Brock Heward does a great job. He has been consistent calling out officials for bad roughing the passer penalties, and that was one of them. That was a game-changing, absolutely horrific call. You just officials, don't insert yourself into a situation where you don't need to, especially late in the game. That was a bad call. That was a really, really bad call. So the Cougs miss a bowl game, which stinks. It's a lean lose because Cam Ward, I would guess, is off to the NFL. Your two studs on defense, Jackson and Stone, are gone. They're out of eligibility. The transfer portal opens on December 4th, and Jake Dickert has openly said, we don't have enough NIL to get guys and to keep them around. Tough times could be ahead here for the Cougs. It's worse for the Beavs because they don't have a head coach right now, and that's why Oregon State is the outright loser of the final week of regular season football in the Pac-12. Nothing feels good in Corvallis. Nothing. What do you have to feel good about right now? Nothing. And I think that sucks. I think it absolutely sucks. Oregon State fans do not deserve this. They just don't. The Beavs is a program, hired the right coach, invested in their program, showed up and supported their team, made investments to upgrade their stadium. They were doing everything right, and now they're being punished. And there's nothing they could have done to stop Jonathan Smith from leaving. If the Pac-10 stays together, by the way, heck, even if maybe the Pac-9 had stayed together, I don't think Jonathan Smith leaves. He's at his alma mater. He described it as his dream job because I think it was. But he's going to get more money, more resources, and a more stable situation in Michigan State. And he's off to the Big Ten. So you got no coach, no certain future with your conference affiliation, nothing. And to boot, Oregon just beat you 31-7. Bad times in Corvallis. Bad times. They're an outright loser right now. And I hope it gets better. I do. I'll continue to cover it here on the show, but I hope it gets better. Okay. I have earned the right to be absolutely full on Colin Cowherd levels of gloating and arrogant right now. Because in March, I tried to tell you, and I wouldn't say I got immense pushback, but I think some people might have treated it as a joke, that I was doing it just kind of to be facetious or fun or just kind of a running gag on the program or anything like that. When I told you back in March, the over-unders came out for football teams. And I said, if you want to go make money, go hammer the California Golden Bears over 4.5. It was my favorite over-under right away when those totals came out on FanDuel. And guess what? The Bears went over 4.5. But not only that, the total moved to 5.5, and I again felt vindicated. Well, now here is the full circle vindication for me. This may be among my sharpest predictions of all time. And I've had some zingers, I've had some duds, but this falls into the former of those two categories. Because no one cared, talked about, or believed in the California Golden Bears. And I looked at everything they had done the season prior and in the offseason. And though it did not materialize exactly how I predicted, because I thought Sam Jackson would be a part of it, I think they upgraded their quarterback position from Jack Plummer to Fernando Mendoza. Spavital was a great hire. Their O-line wasn't great, but it was better. They've got playmakers. Their defense wasn't amazing, but enough at times. It was certainly good on Saturday. And the California Golden Bears, for the first time since before COVID, are a bowl-eligible football team. And I called it here on the show. And my preseason record prediction for them was 6-6. And I said before Saturday on the Friday show, Cal is going to go into the Rose Bowl and upset UCLA. I have been dead on the money with them consistently all season long. They've been one of my best picks consistently when I put them in the Pac-12 prime picks. And I picked their record right on the money. Not every game, did not get every game correct. I remember taking a bunch of heat from Auburn fans when I said, yeah, I think they're going to beat Auburn. They thought it was ridiculous. How could it even be a close game? And Cal should have won the football game. Well, here are the Bears at 6-6. Good for Justin Wilcox. And they're the only outright winner this week because this is a Cal team that, correct me if I am wrong, just won their final 3 games in order to get into bowl eligibility. This was something that was seriously in doubt. It was seriously in doubt. And Cal, 4-5 in conference play, they had lost 4 games in a row. And before every game, I made a prediction. I thought they'd beat Washington State. I thought they'd beat Stanford. And I picked them to beat UCLA. And they get to go play in a bowl game. And in a time and an era where bowls don't mean a lot to everybody, I assure you, it means something. Maybe not everything, but something to Justin Wilcox, that staff, and those fans that are out there, that they're going to get to go and play a non-conference battle against I don't know who, with a chance to end the year at 7-6 and carry that momentum into the ACC. But I was on them for months. I plugged it on this show every chance that I got. Sometimes I was mocked, but I was very right. I tried to tell you all. I'm not always right, but man, I feel extremely vindicated with the Golden Bears finishing the year at 6-6. the Bruins at 6-5, or at 7-5 rather. That one felt pretty good for me, gotta be honest. And I think I earned the right to come on here and gloat and tell you about that one. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Let me know if you got any questions about anything as always. And until that next time, have a wonderful rest of your day.